I used to believe in fake it till you make it, you know, and I used to be out there and I'd be, you know, because that's what you are, right? You're a young kid, you know, you got a radio show, you don't know exactly what you're doing. You're out there, you're talking and you're trying to be funny and you're trying to be engaging and you're trying to get people, but you're faking it till you make it.
Yeah.
Now I don't feel that way, and I shared this with you I think a few days ago, but I don't feel like I'm faking it anymore, you know. And it's like, I'm not saying we made it, you know, obviously, right. You know, we didn't make it yet, but I'm not faking it anymore either. So there's some in between faking and making.
I'm Ty Davis, and welcome to the first episode of the podcast Unmuted. I'm here with Parm Dahoot, the other co-host and co-founder of Mute Me, which I am as well. And we are just going to be talking about all things innovative and business in this fast-moving world. So welcome.
Thanks, Ty.
Thanks.
So yeah, I'm super excited to be here. We've been talking about having a podcast for a little while, creating our own content, and it took us a little while to get here, but I'm so glad we're here because now we're actually doing
We got it.
We got it done. We got the mic set up, the camera set up, and now we're going to be able to actually put real content out there.
Yeah.
We feel like we have something to share.
Exactly.
You may not yet, but we definitely do.
Exactly. No, I think there is. You know, we've been on a pretty good
trajectory
and entrepreneur route. You know, with a couple of things that we'll be talking about in the podcast. Which we've been on Shark Tank. We were able to do crowdfunding and get to a point where we have a fully functioning business. And so those are things that I'm going to talk about. All the wins and the losses during that process, and just where we talked about technology and business is heading in the world, and how we build that into our company, how everyone can build that into their company, or what other people are doing out there, not just us, and just having conversations around that. So
no, it's exciting.
Yeah,
it's exciting because we get to tell our story, but also I'm also looking forward to when we bring on guests and get to tap into their stories as well. And so this is one step in that direction, and it's pretty cool to be able to be here and to be able to do this now.
Exactly, and all those stories. What we're hoping is that these, if you pick up little things that work for us, or things that we failed at, or even the guest, or even yourself being able to share this on TikTok or our YouTube Shorts, or the different platforms that we have this, where we can have conversations, and it's kind of a process of learning from one another and trying to get to that point where you have the ultra successful company, and that's something we'll talk about too. Like what is a measure of success?
Yeah.
Because I could say we're successful, but maybe we're not to the point where we've had that buyout of X amount of money from a company, but there's a lot of different aspects of what makes a company successful, wins along the way, and how do you get there, and how do you learn from mistakes to get there quicker.
Yeah, no, and it's true. Like I said this the other day when we were talking, but we're other people's definition of successful.
Right.
We're not our own definition of successful yet. We still have a ways to go to hit our own standards and hit our own goals, but we're on that journey. And what better way to kind of, especially in the digital age where everyone has access to everything, what better way to bring people along the way than to share, our journey with you, right?
Yeah.
And so we're only 2 years into this. We've been able to take a product from scratch to here.
Yeah, hardware product too, which is not easy to do.
Yeah, and so for other people, it's kind of cool, I think, because a lot of people have software ideas, a lot of people have other ideas, business ideas, but there's not that much content out there for folks that are doing hardware products. And between both of us, right, because you have, a Willow & Co. as well, along with your wife, right, you have experience with manufacturing and children's baby, apparel brand and clothing, you have experience there. And now we have experience with Mute Me, which is a technology hardware product, mass-produced hardware product. And so that's a lot of experience between both of us, and I feel like there's going to be value that people can get from some of the insights that we have.
I agree, and that's what we hope for, and there's lots of different things to talk about in this whole process. Like we spoke about a little bit. There was how we got started, how we used crowdfunding, Kickstarter, Indiegogo. The marketing around that, getting the funds to basically be the seed money for ourselves. It's like raising money, right? Mm-hmm. But with X amount of people all contributing instead of just one angel investor or a VC company. It's a great way that you're actually giving people stuff back for their early investments. So we'll have conversations around that. Parm's especially really good at 3D printing, and that's been a underlying factor of MuteMe for a long time, and being a huge part of whether it's prototypes that are being made or thinking that we were going to just be 3D printing all these anyways because of the original.
Sure, yeah.
And how much we thought we'd actually do in the crowdfunding in the beginning, which we blew it out of the out of the water what we thought, and we were able to do and go have a manufacturer, mass produce this with a different approach.
But we didn't know that, right?
Right.
Yeah, and it's like when you start something and you don't know what it's going to be like, there's at every scale there's a different strategy that's going to help you win and help you get ahead. And in the very beginning it was scary for sure because we had no idea what it was going to be.
Yeah.
And so I'm excited to talk about that too.
We'll talk about that, and then there's a lot of different things. Being in a large retail store early on across the United States,
That's
the good and the bad part of that.
You know what's funny? Because sometimes I forget.
Yeah, exactly.
Sometimes I think back and I'm like, wait, what? We did that?
We did, yeah.
So
that
cool.
we'll do something dedicated to talking about that because there's a lot to undercover. With what happened there, but for right now, let's just talk about kind of that origin, how it got started. It's a question that we often get asked by a lot of different people, which is, where'd the idea come up from? How'd the idea start? So I'm going to ask you that. How did MuteMe start?
Yeah, so we actually have, this is really just for for everyone else, right? But we have a mutual friend who brought us together, and he basically picked up the phone and gave us a call. We were all in the middle of COVID, and so we all had this problem where we would constantly be, and we had different problems actually, but we'd constantly be muted when we were not supposed to be, unmuted when we're not supposed to be. It was always a mismatch. And for everyone else, I think that was like the big problem, right?
Right.
For you, I remember this very vividly. For you and Handeep, and it was a problem. You wanted something that gave you a notification that you were on a meeting, so when family members would walk in, they would know you were busy or not.
Right.
And that was like a huge, problem for you. And for me, it was really about the speed of responding to someone, right? And so I had, I'm like a power user on a computer. I have multiple windows open. And when you have so many different windows open on your computer, it's not easy to find that mute button. It takes a few seconds. And I was at a pension fund on with board members and the CEO at times, and I would want to be able to quickly chime in when I need to.
Yeah.
And that extra 4 seconds means that sometimes that conversation moves on. So we all had kind of different things.
Got a lot of power players.
We had a lot of power players
on that
call.
They all want their voice heard, so you got to be quick.
Yeah, you got to be quick.
Be quick to get your voice in there. Yeah.
Yeah, and so so we all had different things that we wanted. We wanted a better call experience, and so when we came together. The initial idea was just a mute button for Zoom, right? And so it was like, mute button for Zoom. Do you like the idea? We're like, yeah, we love the idea.
Yeah.
Next steps. And then, it's like, hey, I really want this illuminated, right? And so, you came in and you were like, hey, it'd be so cool if this was lit up. And I was like, okay, that's going to be hard to do. And I pushed back, I remember.
Yeah.
And you're like, no, it's important. And Handeep pushed back too. And I remember that, that got us to illumination. And then all these little factors came in, but our other co-founder who's helped start the company with us, Scott, he actually came in and pulled us together, introduced an idea. Yeah. We all came together.
We didn't know each other.
We didn't know each other.
The mutual friend was Scott. So, myself and Brittany knew Scott and Sam. They were our neighbors. And we had, our kids were the same exact age. Mm-hmm. They played together. But we didn't know Parm and Handeep as part of this. So they knew you from...
They actually knew Handeep from a NASA hackathon. And so Scott and Handeep participated. They were on the same team at a NASA hackathon. They actually didn't know of my skill sets at all, right? Yeah. And so they didn't want me to join the company. They wanted Handeep to join the company. And so the call was really for her. And so when she got the call, she was like, her initial thoughts were like, oh, this is whatever, but I'll talk to Parm about it and see what he thinks. And she came over to me and she was like, hey, what do you think of this idea? And I was like, oh, that's easy. Like, we can do this in like a week.
Yeah.
And, and she was like, and, obviously, and that's one of the things about entrepreneurship is your initial thought sometimes is you completely underestimate how much work something's going to be.
All the time.
Right? Yeah, you do that, and then you realize how much work it actually is later. But yeah, she said that, and I was kind of sitting there, and I'm like, let's jump on a call with him and see what happens. And from the very first time I met you, I was like, oh, this guy's like a cool guy, right?
Oh.
And not trying to butter you up or anything because but
We're past that anyway.
we're past that anyways, yeah. But it was really just like, hey, this guy's smart, he's intelligent, they have experience with entrepreneurship, and so this is something that they're a power couple. Let's that's cool.
Yeah.
I do think Sandeep and I are also a power couple. It
Oh,
feels
100%.
weird. Feels weird to say that.
No,
but,
100%.
But yeah, but competent people who know what they're doing, who are pushing and trying to build something, right?
Yeah.
And then Scott and Sam, I kind of felt the same way about them
Yeah.
too. I was like, man, she's worked with him in the past. I asked Sandeep, I'm like, how is he? She's like, he's super smart. He's super analytical. He has his MBA. He's this type of personality. And I was like, I can work with that. And so we set off, right?
Yeah.
And I remember that first meeting. I don't know if you remember, but this was like the first day of September, I think, or second day of September.
Okay.
And maybe it was like the last day of August, but we had our first meeting, and like we already had tasks at the end of that meeting, right?
Yeah.
We're like, hey, okay, Parm, you're gonna go buy this domain name, and it was just the muteme.io, right? Domain name,
Yeah.
right? Ty is working on branding and names, right, for the company, right? And making sure that this is what we're gonna do, right? And so all these little things kind of fell into place. Like I think by maybe it was our second meeting,
Yeah.
and it was just so fast. Everything moved so quickly.
It did move quickly, and I think and this is a question that I've had people ask us before, because there's a lot of people out there that are doing companies and they're doing it on their own, and even with the original 6 that we had, there's a lot of different hats you have to wear with anything with a startup.
Yeah.
For people out there that have startups, it could be 5, 6, even 100, 200, 300 people. There's still a lot of different things that you're doing. So the people out there have their own businesses by themselves, and that's even spreading your self-worth thin on the different things. And so for us, the question is like, well, how did you guys get a team together?
We all had full-time jobs still.
Yeah, and we all have full-time jobs.
Yeah.
So this was, full-time there and part-time doing this, nights, evenings, mornings. But we're lucky enough that, through the organization of each person on our team, everyone had a specialty that they excelled at. So for you, hardware and software, that's where you came in, hitting the ground running, getting prototypes out there, working prototypes within weeks. Scott, coming from the business side and the MBA side and just having full grasp of that. Sam from the project management. Brittany, which is my wife, marketing, social media for her. She has her own company, a baby apparel company that she's had for 5 years. Myself as well, the world of marketing and technology and relationship building, I think is a really good for myself. And then Handeep just having a background in
IP.
IP.
Like how lucky was that, right?
And then that's one of the biggest ones. The IP aspect a lot of times is people, because the patent conversation comes into the ideas and stuff, right? Where it's like, what do I do, for a patent? What do I do for trademark and all that? And there's a lot to it. And, we're lucky that Handeep had that. She was teaching courses on that as well.
Yeah, she was teaching courses at the time. And it was one of those things where it gave us like a kind of a bump forward really, really quickly, because we didn't have to spend a whole bunch of extra money on things that may not have delivered value. So and
exactly that. So it worked out to our favor that the group that was brought together, everyone was able to focus on something and just get going quickly.
Something different.
Something different.
And something different. So everyone had a degree of ownership over something.
Yes.
And that was super cool because I felt like, sure, I brought prototypes back to you guys. What do you guys think?
Right.
You brought videos back to us. What do you guys think? But you were in control. You had ownership over it. I was in control. I had ownership over it, right? Scott was handling most of the business decisions. Like, we weren't worried about any of that.
Yeah.
And so it was just like things were just moving, and we were getting stuff done. Yeah.
Trust established early on that everyone was doing their part, and we just went right into it, and even outside of things that we knew on our own, we still reached out to our networks, and I think it's an important part, because you get information from people that may have done it. We had Brittany and I had a friend that had done some crowdfunding as well, so we reached out just to talk to them. I think early on we were going to go with Indiegogo
Yep.
to start it, and he helped advise like, hey, Kickstarter is the way to go first.
Yep.
Then you move on to Indiegogo, which we'll talk about that in another episode because there's a lot to pack in crowdfunding.
Yeah.
And what we felt.
But how smart was that decision, right?
It was a brilliant decision.
Yeah.
And so if people that know, Kickstarter is a place, crowdfunding. Crowdfunding is where you go and you put an idea on this platform, you build out prototypes and pictures, and there's a community of crowdfunders that go and you say, hey, and I forget our prices actually, Erlon,
It was $25.
$25, which we sell ours
Yeah.
for $39 right now, but
25 for a 2-pack.
for a 2-pack, which
Yeah,
is incredibly cheap, and
Yeah.
probably us losing money
We-
actually.
we did lose money,
We
yeah.
lose money on that,
Yeah.
but that's the incentive is where you're saying, hey, for you backing us and waiting, a little bit of amount of time to get the product in hand, you get it at a discounted rate,
And you get it first.
and you get it first before everyone else, and so that's the incentive of being like an early adopter.
And you get to weigh in on it too.
Yes.
Like you get to,
a lot of feedback there, which
yeah.
we've actually had to this day we have people that were original backers on our crowdfunding that give us great feedback, that were there, that were always providing us feedback. So that crowdfunding, that's just a quick definition of it, just for anyone listening out there. It's like, what's crowdfunding, what's Kickstarter, what's Indiegogo? But going back to the point of having a good amount of people that were able to put together their skills and work towards a common goal was pretty cool.
Yeah, and I think that if we didn't have the team that we had in those early days, we would have probably fell flat on our face.
Yeah.
Because starting anything is hard, and the idea was not that big, right? So this is a mute button for online calls, and I'm not like trying to downplay it in any sense, but it wasn't like, oh, we're gonna go change the world.
Yeah.
It was more like, hey, we think this is cool. We think we would find this useful. We would use this if we had it. It's the middle of COVID, so we think there's going to be millions of other people that weren't necessarily, working from home that now are working from home, so they could possibly use this as well.
Yep.
And so let's do it. Let's go do this, and we know how to do this. And if we didn't have the team that we had, right, I could see us not making the type of traction that we made. And there's other, mute companies out there. There's other mute buttons that started right after a Kickstarter campaign or right around our Kickstarter campaign. None of them got the traction we got. And it's 100% in my mind, it's driven by our team. And that's crazy because it's when you're in business with someone, it's like being married to them.
Yeah.
I see Ty more than I see Handeep on certain days, right?
Yeah, I talked to
And
you.
so-
I talked to you more than 99% of people.
Yeah.
And even early on when we were just knew each other. It was
Yeah,
like
we were
talking
barely
every single day.
Yeah, you're talking every single day. You're on chats all the time. You're like, what are you doing? Where are you at? Who are you talking to? Even like weird questions that you'd never think of. But I think we established that trust pretty early on, like you said just a few moments ago, and I think that really helped us kind of get past a lot of the hurdles that other businesses face, where they run out of steam, and so there was always someone on our team that was like pushing something forward.
Right.
And so it was motivating,
Yeah.
And so it was like, okay, so Scott just finished this. Handeep just finished that. I told Ty that I'd have him a prototype for by this day because he's filming.
Yeah.
Okay, I better get my, butt in gear and deliver so I'm not slowing him down from being able to do what he's supposed to do. And I'm sure you felt the same way when you're working on those videos. You're like, yeah, this Kickstarter page, we said we were going to go live on this day.
Yep.
Yeah. And so I felt like it was kind of, we put a little bit of pressure on each other. But we had a lot of good communication and transparency, and we were able to push things forward and kind of maintain momentum. And I don't think that would have been possible if we didn't have this particular team.
No, I agree. I think it got us, time to market quicker than, if there was less people. And then, even we talked about the 6 original, and then we brought on a 7th person, which was Bubban, who's
Our software
developer, which he was crucial. He came, I think,
in January.
Mid crowdfunding, or towards the end of our
Towards the end of our crowdfunding campaign,
our Kickstarter campaign.
But he came on once we knew we were going to be successful.
Right.
Like we had done at that point. I think we had done almost 100,000. We talked to him. We started talking to him in December.
Right
at the end when we started doing like $9,000 a day in sales. We were like, what? Because you went all this time and you got like no sales, and then all of a sudden you're doing what you were doing in like 25 days in one day.
Yeah.
And so that's when he came on board. But he was absolutely crucial to
100%.
get, the software package the way we have it today done. Because the way I had done the software in the very beginning was mute button only.
Props to Parm though. He was getting in there and figuring out the software. Maybe at a slower rate than what Bovin can do because it's just second nature for Bovin. That's his job as a software developer. And then there's a little bit more modern processes that Bovin did. But that was kind of like the last piece. For that time and place on the team to be like, all right, like we
have a full team.
We have a full team because software piece is huge, and those are things we'll talk later on about. The integrations with Zoom, with Teams, with Google Meet, with WebEx, and all these different platforms have different requirements that need our software to be aligned to that.
But in the very beginning, we weren't thinking of any of that.
True.
So with the product like we started with was what you call a minimal viable product, right? MVP, and it was really just a button that clicks, has red and green LEDs on the inside, and mutes your computer. Windows only in the beginning, right? Eventually, we came up with Mac version, but in the very, very beginning, before Kickstarter completed, all it did was mute on on PC only at the operating system level, only at the OS level. So would it have worked? Absolutely. Is it the same product that we sell today? Absolutely not. Is that product anyone can develop in, if anyone listening can go out and develop that product in 2 weeks? Sure, absolutely. You could go buy a, Arduino kit, put it together, and you could probably do it in 2 weeks. Sure, no problem. Is the product that we sell today a product you could go out and develop in 2 weeks? No, there's no way. There's 20,000 plus lines of code now, and it's a completely different product from what it was when we launched.
Yeah, which is a good thing, right? Because you learn things, you get better at things, you implement things,
but you have to start somewhere.
You do.
Yeah, and so like if you can, if for the folks who are listening, right, if you can take something and build it, and it doesn't matter what it is, right? So, and I'll talk about our mute button just because that's what we're talking about now. But if you wanted a mute button for a call, and you can go out and build it, and you can have a solution, you're already a long way in your journey. But a lot of people don't know how to take their complicated idea, right, and boil it down to something super simple. And that just takes it takes thought and process, and you have to do something. You have to come up with something, release something. You have to ship product, and once you start shipping product, that's when you're going to be able to now start iterating on that product and building off of that product, right?
Yeah.
Until it's in someone else's hands, it's not anything. We always talk about the ideas, right? Ideas are worth nothing, until
That's Parm's famous quote, which is which is true. Ideas are worth nothing until
you execute on them.
Execute on them. There's millions of ideas out there, and ideas that someone could have had an idea before. Let's say food delivery.
Yeah.
And
they did.
They did, but someone went and implemented it, and they were first to market or even second to market. And,
growing up, right? So like I don't know if you remember those magazines, the Swanson's magazines.
Oh yeah.
Right? Where you could order food and the Swanson's truck would come to your house, and we were poor, so we would never obviously take advantage of that. But I remember, like, I don't know who it was, but like they dropped off a magazine at our house for some reason. I don't know how I got a hold of this Swanson's magazine, but whatever.
At one of your rich friends' houses, maybe.
Yeah, I don't know.
Just hanging out there. And you're like, I want to see what this is.
Yeah, and it was like food delivery trucks that would come to your house and deliver food, groceries and everything. And it's like, that's crazy, right? Because that's way back in the day, way before the internet, right? It's a magazine. Right. Well, it took, how many years between that, like not being a thing anymore, or not being viable, or not being utilized by people, or maybe it is. I don't even know. They may still exist, right? To Instacart coming in and being like, hey, and so it's like you could have the same idea, right? Same exact idea or the same service where for the end user it's 95% similar. It's just that 1 or 2% of how you implement it, your execution of that idea, that makes all the difference in the world on whether or not you're, Instacart, DoorDash, or if you're the Swanson's Food Company.
Windows Phone.
Yeah, Windows Phone, right? It's still a phone, still color screen, still touch screen, still has music, still plays videos, right? It's just the execution of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's, and that's something that you kind of learn the hard way, right? Where you're making decisions along the way when you're building your company, and you're thinking about execution. You're always thinking about execution, but you don't know if the moves that you're making are always the right moves or not. The only way to know is when the market tells you.
Yeah.
Right. It's other people. It's other people putting their dollars down when buying your product.
Yeah. A lot of A/B testing.
Yeah, that tells you. Yeah, that tells you. And ultimately, that's where you have to get to, and you're not going to get there if you're just sitting there not actually shipping product. You know? So
I agree.
Yeah.
So it's for where we started, where we got today, it's been quite a we'll use the word journey. It has been a journey, but an adventure too in terms of getting here. A lot of lessons learned, a lot of things that even from Mute Me, I've been able to implement with Will & Co, mine and Brittany's brand, with helping other people that come with questions and stuff, and vice versa for us, for Willow & Co, things that we learned from that on the manufacturing side that we implement here. And for
on the packaging, right? Like we use the same packaging company.
See, I always forget that. We do use the same pagging company.
Because I was like, hey, who do you guys use for packaging? And it's we're
streamlining things a little bit quicker than the process that goes
you have
into
trust.
You
have trust.
It's huge.
Yeah,
huge. And that's even for we'll talk about the manufacturing process for us, but for Willow & Co, we vetted someone for a year until we actually trusted that manufacturer, because there's a lot of these things are your dreams of growing them, and you may start with just a small amount of money,
and it's your hard-earned money.
Yeah, like things that can go towards something else.
Yeah. So nowadays, so Mute Me makes money now, right? So now we wanted to build the studio. We spent $10,000, 15,000. I don't even know how much we spent, but
more than we should have.
But we did it, right?
Yeah.
And because Mute Me makes money, right? It's a little bit different. But when it's money that you've made through hard work and you scrapped and you've saved and you're launching your business, you're extra careful about how you spend that money, because first, it's a smaller pool, right? Second, it took you 5 years to get to that point to launch your business, right? And you're not going to take that money and go do what we just did here,
Exactly. And we're inventory-based company too. So a lot of that money is it on
goes
shelves.
Back in inventory.
And you have to, it's amount of like, how quickly can you turn that product and make that profit? And so how long is it sitting on those shelves where, it's not moving?
It's locked up, right?
It's locked up. So that's money there. And, it's cool. It's just cool where we've gotten. And, we'll dive into specific topics as we continue on this podcast. Like I said, talking about things like 3D printing, talking about packaging is one of them, finding the right manufacturer, what it's like to be in a retail store, where what the whole Shark Tank process and how
the Shark Tank one might be multiple episodes because
it's a long one. Yeah,
it's a long one. Yeah,
yeah, and so that was cool. And like we talked about crowdfunding, just different things that are part of the process, and even talking about we talked about the technology and how it's moving and everything, and how we've implemented AI. At Mute Me, we're a small company. Customer service is huge for us. And how has AI stepped in and helped us with that? So really cool things we're going to talk about, and just excited to share whatever knowledge we have, and hope that helps somebody else that's listening. Hoping that people can engage, and hoping that people that maybe listen want to come on and talk to us just about their experience, and what they're doing and what they've learned, and maybe Parm and I can learn from them as well, and all the listeners can learn as well. So this is gonna be fun.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to all of it. I feel like this is something that I've been wanting to do for a long time. It's kind of going back to roots a little bit for me, right? Because I did a radio show for a few years, for 2.5 years, almost 15 years ago.
All right.
And so this is getting back. This is getting back into it. Just don't have the controls in front of me, and it's not a radio station, obviously.
Yeah.
But it's our beautiful studio, so it's a little different. And it's different because this is our own thing.
Right.
Before I used to believe in fake it till you make it, and I used to be out there, and I'd be, because that's what you are, right? You're a young kid, you got a radio show, you don't know exactly what you're doing. You're out there, you're talking, and you're trying to be funny, and you're trying to be engaging, and you're trying to get people, but you're faking it till you make it.
Yeah.
Now I don't feel that way, and I shared this with you, I think, a few days ago, but I don't feel like I'm faking it anymore, and it's like, I'm not saying we made it, obviously,
Right.
we didn't make it yet, but I'm not faking it anymore either. So there's some in between faking and making,
Yeah.
and we're there now. And
It's
so
trying to-
it's kind of cool to be able to share from real experiences because we have real stories to tell. And so
Exactly.
I'm excited to tell some of those stories.
The in-between's interesting because
in-betweens, yeah.
you battle yourself in terms of, you've made it to a certain degree, but at the same time,
You're still struggling.
you're still struggling, and
Yeah.
you've set high standards. I think most entrepreneurs are setting high standards for themselves where it's like, what is the ultimate goal? What's the end result? And even when they get there, though, it's on the next thing,
So
right?
it's on the next thing, yeah.
And
So
so-
yeah. Well, and we talked pretty openly, but when we talked about that first time when we hit over $1 million in sales,
Yeah.
right? And it's like, okay, $1 million in sales, like it's gonna be so badass. It's gonna be so awesome when we hit $1 million in sales.
Yeah.
And then it happens, right? And you're like, oh man, we got to hit $5 million
Yeah,
in
you
sales,
gotta hit $5 million.
$10 million in sales, right?
Yeah.
And so it's just that feeling where you think you have a goal, and you get close to reaching that goal, and then you realize like, hey, no, I want to go further.
Right.
I can go further. This can go further, and so that's kind of a cool feeling. And it's not something that I think you get to experience in anything other than entrepreneurship. There's no limits to entrepreneurship, right?
Right.
So like when we think of, and we talked about this once before too, but when you think of sports, there's still an upper limit. Like, LeBron James is not going to score 200 points in one game.
Right.
There's like some upper limit of how many points he can score in a game, some upper limit of how much success he can achieve with respect to the game, right? With the game that's being played. This game, the game of entrepreneurship, there's no limits. And so it's an unlimited game. And so there's no, every time you reach something, you feel like you can go further. And you want to try to see what you can do to, move yourself into a position where you can actually attain whatever that next goal is. And so it's an unlimited, relentless game. And there's no breaks, there's no timeouts. It's different from anything else. And I feel like it's the secret to, to American success, to the success of this system. And it's because people are relentless.
Right. And I think, you summed it pretty well. And the only thing I'll say to that is like that's where you hear a lot of entrepreneurs talk about, how many failures until there's a success that they got. And there's a lot, whether small or large, or, if you started another company, I think I've started 3 or 4 other companies that, have failed, not worked out, or they worked out in a small, successful way where there just wasn't a future in it, but
there's not enough.
There was enough that in that time was able to start something else with that. Like, okay, made a little bit of money from this business. Let's go into something that might have more of a longer vision or a longer term success rate. And it's just a matter of getting out there, trying and doing it. So,
Yeah. No, it's not. Everyone doesn't do it. Right.
Yeah, and time is
timing. Timing's the thing.
Time's your biggest thing.
Yeah.
How much time do you have in the world? How much time? What are you going to sacrifice to give up for spending more time on doing your own thing?
Yeah.
And like we talked about early on, like all of us had full-time jobs when we first started this, and we were working on part-time. For yourself, you quit your full-time job, took a pay cut to do this full-time, and you've been doing it for I think over a year now.
Yeah, more.
Yeah, and for myself, it's still
almost. It's actually going to be. It'll be 2 at this point. It's actually been 2 years since I've been at my job.
Wow. See,
Yeah.
time's going fast.
Because Zia was born on May 10th, and I was off at that point already.
That's right.
Yeah,
That's right.
But I quit in October though.
Correct.
But yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And so it's and then for myself in the last couple of months being more dedicated to this, still not to the amount of hours that Parms puts in, which is a crazy amount, but still dedicating more to this and looking at life from a different perspective. It's nice to be owning something.
Yeah.
It's nice to be in control of the thing that you are building up and the success of it, and not really having to work for someone else's company that they're building up, that they built up, that did a great job. Trying to put yourself in position to be that person that is building up your company and hopefully building out your own
whatever.
whatever.
Yeah,
You know, structure at one point, people working for you.
Yeah.
And getting to that point of success. So,
Yeah.
yeah. So this has been awesome
Yeah,
on the first
definitely.
episode. You know, what we'll do, we're going to talk about different topics, like I said before. So thanks for joining us on this first episode of Unmuted with Ty and Parm. And we hope you come and listen to more.
Yeah, thanks, Ty.
Thanks, Parm.
All right.
How long was that?
We are at 44 minutes,
Hey, perfect.
but we started recording a little early, so we're probably around 40 minutes.
That's fine. It's just
yeah. Let's go ahead and stop everything.